Welcome and thank you for joining us today for the Precision Dairy Farming from Hooves to Harvest webinar series. This project is brought to you by UVM Extension Northwest Crops and Soils team and is sponsored by the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets. We're about halfway through our series and have a great lineup of speakers from all over the world. Today we have two experts joining us who work locally, and we are shifting from more cow-side technologies to learning about the tools that are being used out in the fields. You can use the same Zoom link that was provided to you when you registered to access all of the sessions, and all of the sessions are being recorded and posted to the Northwest Crops and Soils Program website under Conferences and Events tab. So if you've missed any, you can find them there. There are water quality and certified crop advisor credits available for each session, and we will share the link and QR code at the end of the session. There will also be 3 poll questions throughout the presentation. If you could take a second to answer them when they pop up on your screen, we would greatly appreciate it. And if you have any questions during the presentation, please enter them in the chat and we will facilitate them when the speaker has concluded. Our first speaker today is Scott Magnan. Scott owns Scott Magnan's Custom Service in Vermont, in St. Albans, Vermont, offering custom manure spreading, round baling, and more. They're a dealer for ag leader technology and VTI injectors. Scott also farms 200 acres of his own, primarily in hay, corn, and soybeans. And he has worked to trial and develop many of the conservation practices on Vermont farms through his work with UVM Extension and as a board member and current chair of the Franklin Grand Isle Farmers Watershed Alliance. Thanks for joining us today, Scott. I will stop sharing and you can put your screen up.
Great. Can everyone hear me and see my screen?
That looks good, Scott. Thanks.
Okay. So thanks for the introduction. So I guess I got started as a custom operator. And in around 2012, we kind of felt that we needed to do a better job with our record keeping, especially in our manure side of things. So we bought some displays and found out there wasn't a lot of support in the area. It got us more interested in finding solutions. In 2015, I think we became a dealer for Ag Leader, really as a training tool and to extend outreach to other farmers. And that really got the ball rolling for us and gave us some resources to work from. So jumping right into the presentation, which is on variable rate and how to better communicate and work with data. We'll start with the variable rate and ask the question, why variable rate? And first thing we want to do is, or what it really does is address the variation in fields. So you may have a 70-acre field and there's gonna be variations within the field that may need to be addressed differently. The reason we want to address the variation is really for resource efficiency, utilizing the inputs on a geospatial level. And some of the things we might manage would be fertilizer and amendments such as lime, seed. We want to vary population. And we're looking to achieve optimal yield goals. And we could set yield goals in that field that aren't the same across the field, that the yield potential is not there. So really it's like taking your nutrient management plan from at least a Vermont point of view and just bringing that into multiple regions within a field rather than just treating the whole field the same. We can also have rate control around environmentally sensitive areas. So first thing we need to do is detect where the variability is. So we can detect using previous data or available data. So yield monitoring from harvest, if you have those records, we could look at that and see where the variability is. We could look at some historic yield data over multiple years and see where we need to go in the field to address potential issues. Something that's a little newer and more readily available is NDVI data, normalized difference vegetation index over reflecting lights off the standing crop and getting back information at the satellite level to track the variation. And you can see this is the same field, and there is a correlation between the harvest maps and the NDVI data. So potentially a less expensive way as a scouting method to have a map to go out and figure out what's going on and why. So some of the causes of variability would be fertility, compaction, shade, soil type, moisture variations, and then crop rotations could cause some variability because you're managing two sections of the field the same. So you need to be thinking about the causes, or yeah, think about the causes, and then go out to the field and then measure the degree of variability. So the first thing I would think you might want to do is just direct observation, waterways, ledge, shade. So those could all attribute to why you've got variability in the field, and they might require different management strategies than some of the things we're going to talk about later with like a prescription map. These would be, you'd have to fix some water issues potentially, address whether or not you want to do address shade. Ledge may or may not be any way to address that, but you wouldn't want to spend money on something else if you had a ledge issue. I think that's where I'm going with that. So lab soil testing, you could look at different results in NP and K or other attributes. You could look at compaction. We got an example over here of a planting map. And Mike might go into something a little bit in greater detail with planting later. But here we've got a lot of compaction on the outside of our field. So this is just in like the top 2 inches, how it impacted the planter. And you can do some hand testing as well. Maybe use this as a base layer, go out into the field, really look at it. So that could be your variable. You don't know until you look at it a little closer. Field records, you can look back on past years, kind of very similar to like a nutrient management planning process. And you can use the precision ag data and records to help determine what the variable is. What is a prescription? So we've kind of identified what our variable is. So now we want to treat it. So a prescription is a tool to treat the zones of a field differently based on a diagnosed condition. So in the previous slide, we essentially were a doctor, figured out what we needed to do. Now we assign a remedy or a prescription to help solve the problem. Goals are set within each region and corresponding rates are assigned. How was a prescription created? So that is collected from the precision ag records, field records, soil samples, etc. That is organized. Prescription is created by farmer, agronomist, and/or university algorithms. Prescription is drafted in precision ag software and uploaded to the tractor displays and implemented in the field. So there's different types of prescriptions and different ways to do this. So the legend-based prescription is generally based on one variable or multi-year averages. So you take multiple averages and make a map like the one used in the example per se. So that could be harvest data over 4 years. We look at averages and make 3 zones. You can do the same thing with NDVI data. You could use a soil survey map as your reference layer. If you really saw differences in yield between two soil types, you could potentially use that as your reference and make a legend out of it. Uh, Really any single variable that makes sense. And my background's not agronomy, so this is where you really want to talk to your agronomist to figure out what legends make sense for you. But I have a pretty broad understanding of the tools that we need to use and can have those conversations back and forth between like a farmer and an agronomist and help make those decisions. And then once we figure out what our zones are, we can assign each zone a rate. So then there's equation-based prescriptions where you can use multiple data sets or variables and utilize predetermined algebraic equations to make a prescription map, essentially creating management zones based on georeferenced numbers within other data sets. Equation based on previous research in a region. So here's an example of one of the, I guess, lots of different vendors have options now for farmers to pick predetermined prescriptions. And these are usually university based. So you can select from a long list of what might work for your farm and pick one and then send it back to the tractor. And they're generally equation based. So Cornell in this example has got one, Iowa State. So what might work for you? You could check it, enter it. It's a way to do it fairly inexpensively and quickly, but if you don't have the research ahead of it, it's questionable whether it could be applicable to your field. So before you select them, I'd really do some homework and determine if a prescription based off an equation is the right move for you. And we'll talk a little bit more about the planning pieces of it, but this slide, you just need to know there's that option available to you and that there's a lot of platforms out there that could potentially work for you. You could also develop your own, which may or may not be the best way to go. So on the equipment side, you need to modify your system for variable rate. So not all equipment is variable rate ready. So you have to know if it is, and if it's not, what you need to do. So the display collects the data, controls fertilizer and seed rates. It runs prescriptions, controls steering, auto swap functions, other monitoring and control function as the markets develop. So this guy here is our display. This is our receiver for our speed input. This guy's going to talk to modules and other implements behind the tractor. That's a real basic outline of what that does. So behind you, you've got things that monitor. So like a flow meter on the manure tank would monitor flow. It would give you a gallons per acre. Actually, it would give you a pulse back to the display, and then it would do the calculations to give you gallons per acre. And same with a seed tube sensor. This would count seeds, send the information back to the monitor, calculate it out to seeds per acre, and some other very useful data for you to adjust your planter. And then you have the control side. So this is a seed drive, and that would control your population. So if you had a prescription map, it could be 32,000. You come into zone 2, it could drop it down to 28 per se. This is a fertilizer drive motor that would control your rate to adjust for whatever fertilizer you had in the spreader or lime. These are sensors that would count the revolutions of this shaft potentially. And that would be on the monitoring side. So this would be a monitoring tool, monitor, control, control, control. So that's how those systems are working in a real basic just to give you a real basic understanding. So the next piece is conductivity, connecting and moving data. So I think for a long time, we've been on the top one, using USBs, potentially sending files through email or driving to and from the farm to the office or service provider. Takes quite a bit of time, away from the work that we're trying to do. So you can send data wirelessly through cloud programs. Most vendors, or a lot of vendors, John Deere, Ag Leader, Think Case, probably a lot more, can send data wirelessly. They have their own cloud programs, which allow someone like me to connect to somebody else, Mike, say, in the audience. So Mike can go out and do field operations. Data is transferred, I receive his data and I can work with it and then talk to Mike on the phone about the data. Otherwise, I've got to drive out to his farm, pull the data, get it back to my office. So connecting displays, platforms, and software. So there is some collaboration between, say, John Deere, Ag Leader, Precision Planning to get those platforms connected. I would research that before doing it, understand how those programs work, and trial them in some manner before doing it. But there is efforts to connect things. So it can be very helpful. We recently connected two John Deere accounts to our Agfinity account back to SMS and are working on getting some of that data perhaps back to the farmer and figuring out what the best way to do that is, if it's just through reports or back into their cloud program. So there's quite a lot going on there, but don't take that for granted and just assume it's going to work. Talk to people, have a plan in place before doing that, I would say. Evolving management tools. So we talked a little bit about the cloud programs. They continue to develop. They're most widely used for wireless data transfer. You could have access to viewing your maps. Here's an example below. Simple reports. So there's a few less filtering options, but you could print out a simple report on your farm and your operations. Remote support, a pretty important tool moving forward. It's been around for a little while. I think it's going to be more widely used. It saves your techs time on the road. It saves you time in the field if you can just have some Wi-Fi in the cab, call your support team and say, hey, I've got this issue. They can remote in, check it out. They might even be able to control that screen and change some things for you and get you up and going a little quicker. And that's mostly through the cloud programs. They don't link, can't, that's what creates the link. And there are prescription tools within these cloud programs to select from if you've done your homework and know how to use them. Software is going to be a little more in depth, so you can get some real nice analysis tools. Your report filtering is much more in depth. You can filter attributes, move attributes in and out, make that report look more organized in a lot of different manners. You can really get, if you work with the filtering, you can usually present your viewer with whatever their outcome goal is if you work with the filtering, but you don't have as many options in the cloud. Map editing, so you could create boundaries, edit boundaries, do quite a bit with your grower farm and field information in your displays with your software being your primary source. You got advanced prescription tools. You could write your own algorithms and store them and use them. Spatial sorting is pretty huge. We use that a ton on our end for customers. They'll go out and record 3 fields worth of data, all in field A, and we can sort it out to field A, B, and C, and then print the report so the report is accurate. I think we use that tool as much or more than any other tool in our software. So we want to measure success. I think the software programs and some of the cloud programs are pretty widely, a lot of this is about them, but not exclusively. So we can look at yields over time, yield outcomes within regions. Did they meet the yield goal? So we want to verify things after we have done the work. So financial analysis tools require a lot of data and information. So the more times we've been over the field with this system, the more data we're going to have and on a geospatial level. You can add data. You can use it as a partial or a complete. But like I said, the accuracy increases with more passes and it's less manual entries. But you can combine the two, obviously, in a lot of different manners. Population versus yield reports, variety trials and reports, productivity reports. You can look at how your operators are performing and how your investments are paying off on a productivity level. We're still learning. There's many new ways to use these tools and identify opportunities. So it's a growing industry. And we have all these tools, but it kind of goes back to pulling that like a prescription map out of Iowa. The field observation is a real key piece of this. The data does not replace observation, it just enhances it. So once we've made those observations, these tools become more valuable because we've identified a problem just by seeing it. And I think you can't overlook that last metric I put in. So this was a growing piece. So I think when I initially started, I didn't have a full understanding of how much was involved in this and how many pieces of the puzzle you needed to make it work. And this is just a layout of what it might look like. You could wear multiple hats within this, but these are the roles that need to be filled. And just an outline of how it might look. So the farmers work with the technical assistance providers, the operators and advisors to establish goals of operation and roles of the team members. They don't necessarily need to know how every piece works, but they're the goal setters. And I think they need to make sure that the team's in place. The operators must know how to operate the display and equipment and be willing to call for assistance. If they're not willing to call and get help, then pieces of the data get missed or they don't get applied right to the field. So the operator is pretty key in making this happen if the rest of the team has it organized. Agronomists and TA providers will often utilize the data to do nutrient management planning. They can use it for scouting and can work with the farmer and the data management team to make crop recommendations. That can be entered in the display for the next field operation. So they're helping with the agronomy piece of it. Like if you're going to do prescription maps, we really need them involved. They're also often the end goal to get the nutrient management plan. They need the data, so they might help set up the boundaries or present the nutrient management plan, and that brings us into the data management person. So they're helping to collect and organize precision ag data and other data to send to advisors, TA providers, and the farmer, kind of an intermediate source to just make sure everything gets done and they have knowledge of each piece of the precision ag puzzle. They can help put it all together for the farmer, the agronomist, and the operator. So to wrap up, just better ways, lessons learned. Again, that's my son with too many hats on. I think that's been a piece of it. And trying to learn every system becomes very overwhelming. So you can only do so much yourself, and that's where the team comes in. So things we've done just to create some efficiency and or working on it in our own planning is connecting platforms. often freezing quotes because you usually have bought something to have the program. Wi-Fi and the tractors for wireless and routine data transfer. Remote support options, I think, can just help speed up the process and allow everybody to do their job and just eliminate some road time. Having the team approach, like I said, it's too many hats to do everything yourself. And if one person within the team drops the ball, then it falls apart rather quickly. Frequent communication. So we have all this technology, but if people are not talking to each other, it doesn't do everything itself. It needs human interaction to make it work. So key. We need realistic and defined goals. So if you're just starting out, your goal should not be the same. You shouldn't look at this presentation and say, I want to implement prescriptions on every field this year. It's not realistic. It'll fall apart. So goal might just be record keeping in year one for one tractor, or having harvest data. And then that goes into a couple of the other goals, especially the last one. But next goal, each field is unique. So I think initially I thought like prescriptions are really cool if I could I'll pull the University of Iowa and address every variable with a potash recommendation. It's not going to fix wet fields. It's not going to fix all these other variables. So each field is unique. So make sure you're looking at each field as a unique field and not just blanket coveraging things, because you think it would be a good strategy to do it that way. It may be a good strategy, but make sure that you've done your homework. And then long-term investment planning. You can buy a lot of stuff, spend a lot of money, not have the outcome you want. So start with, I think, realistic and defined goals. Figure out who you're going to work with, what equipment's going to work for you, what's not going to work for you. If it's not going to work, then go a different direction and just be smart about investing. Um, Make sure you've got the team and the education behind you to be able to do that. So I think that wraps up my presentation. Dorothy Kinney Landis helped me put it together, and I've been training her on uh, the software side of things, and I think it helped us find some loopholes and talk about the team approach and helped with the presentation. So if she'd like to talk a minute or two, I'd give her the floor before I answer any other questions.
Hi, I'll just introduce myself real quick. My name's Dorothy. I work for Franklin County Natural Resources Conservation District. I've been working with Scott this winter with some of this precision ag work, primarily helping with reporting. And kind of through our collaboration, we've realized how important it is to just like get the systems in place of who's involved and where data is and who it needs to get to and when, so that we make sure we have all the data we need for things like reporting. I've helped with reporting for like the pay for performance program that helps that pays farmers practices that that reduce phosphorus loss from their farms. And so for something like that, it's really important to have, the full picture and full data of what has been going on their fields. And so a piece of that is just making sure we know where all that data is and where it's how it's organized, where it's coming from. So yeah, I can't emphasize enough how important it is to really collaborate and get the different roles of the different team members, the data management team, farmer, technical assistance providers, established as you're getting these systems set up.
Thanks so much, Scott and Dorothy. If anyone has questions, you can throw them right in the chat. I don't see anything right now. One question I had maybe for both of you is, Scott, you talked about utilizing information from using information from folks' existing nutrient management plans and also providing data to go into creating the nutrient management plan. And I guess I wonder if if there's enough integration between your system and a nutrient management planning system, or if you see areas of potential for more integration between those two, like data collection methods, systems.
Yeah, I think it's a really good tool for both. I'd say it's more widely used for like we went out, we did the application, we send it back to the nutrient management planner. So and it's in a readable format. It's got the dates, it's got the rates. So I think it's widely used there, and we're seeing increased use. I think we're still relying on the operators in a lot of cases to just apply the correct rates at the time of application, like not in a prescription format. We have done some trials in a prescription format where they pull it up. We've got one trial going on a farm now where we sit down with the planner. We give them a prescription for every field. We do some drawdowns. So it can be done. It is a lot of work. So it definitely raises the question if it's easier to do it that way or just put the nutrient management plan in the tractor while they're applying.
So are you pulling specific reports? Are there specific helpful reports from a nutrient management plan that you are using regularly on farms?
Yeah, I mean, it varies between whatever report we're looking at, but usually the manure records would be the most widely used tool, how much to apply.
Super. Let's see, there is a question here. It says, Scott, great picture of your son. Can you speak to the differences you or your farmers have observed in the fields over the years?
Yeah, I'd honestly say it's still a learning process. I think this year we've got some really cool projects where we're really diving into what's the problem to address the problem. We've spent a lot of time figuring out the technology piece, like how do we get the right equipment on the tractor? How do we use the equipment? So I feel like now we're really like in a place to dive deeper into, all right, let's figure out how to make some money and do a better job with the equipment. It's helped do both, but I feel like it's been mostly a learning curve.
Looks like a lot of moving parts. I'm sure none of them ever break.
Right, never.
Never. Okay. Thanks so much, Scott. Our next speaker is Mike Contessa. Mike began his career in agriculture during the late 90s, working for Agway. There, he gained experience working at the blend plant and in a variety of departments, including retail. He also gained experience as a spray operator, and in 1999, he joined Champlain Valley Agronomics and became the company's first employee. In 2004, Mike became a certified crop advisor and a partner with the firm, which has now expanded services to reach growers in northern New York and Vermont. Mike's area of responsibility includes regulatory compliance, geographic information data management, and precision agricultural systems. Thanks for joining us today, Mike.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Perfect. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the presentation, Cultivating Tomorrow, Innovations in Planting Technology. As Amber said, I'm Mike Contessa. I'm co-owner of Champlain Valley Agronomics. We're located across the pond from you folks in Peru, New York. My business and partner and I have been working together in this industry since 1999, or about 25 years. And of that, we've been in the precision ag game for about 10. So we've got some experience working with the technology and data management. We apply that, on the agronomy side with our customers and the scouting that we do and the nutrient management planning as well. Thanks to all of you for coming along on the ride here. So from finger pickup meters and ground drives, seed delivery systems and manual downforce springs, jumping to sensors, modules, drives, and tractor computers, things have really changed. And in my opinion, for the better. We've come a long way, even in my 25-year career. The technology advancement, has undoubtedly helped identify and correct agronomic issues that have limited yield. And coupled with improved genetics, we've seen a continual climb throughout my career in yield and yield potentials. The planter pass, arguably the most important pass over the field of the season, is really important, and we only get one chance each season to get it right. So the details really, really do matter here. I show this graphic. This picture goes way back to when I first started in precision ag. It's a picture of Greg Souter, who was the original owner of Precision Planting. Basically saying this is what farmers do too often. They just hope for good results without proper planning, and that's a recipe for failure. So Scott had a slide on monitors, and the monitor really is the brains behind the operation. It's uncommon these days not to see a monitor in the cab of a tractor. It's in control of implements, and in my presentation, planters. It commands that planter, controls it, seeding rates, population, downforce control. It also is a great tool in recording data for analysis after the fact. And I find that the latter is often underutilized. So the display is used to, command the actual application, and then after the fact, it's kind of not thought of. But there's really a lot of opportunity in getting that data out, whether it be sharing in the cloud or USB stick to another data provider or assistant to help you sort through that, as Scott had said in his presentation. This monitor is providing us real-time statistics on planter performance. It's letting the operator know, is everything going okay with the meters? Is my downforce settings correct? Do we need to make an adjustment before it's too late? Before this technology, farmers would go out and scout the fields and say, oh, I should have done something different, or meter 7 was skipping, and I wish I, would have known that. We do have that power in our hands now. On the data recording side, it's pretty powerful to be able to look back at hybrids that you planted and understand, was that the right decision year over year? Should we make an adjustment? Having that monitor in place to track that information is pretty critical to the planter pass. So we're all shooting for a picket fence stand because we know that's the best opportunity for yield. So in this picture, we'd be pretty happy with this. I know I would be. Singulation is important. So, how we control our meters, impacts the overall, plant spacing or singulation. And singulation refers to the way the meter takes one seed at a time off the disc and drops it down the seed tube. If we have a 27-hole meter disc and we get 27 seeds that pass by the seed eye, we've got 100% singulation. We have 28 seeds, we have a multiple. If we get 26 seeds, we have a skip. So skips and multiples, equate to yield loss, plain and simple. For every 1% loss in singulation, we can expect, 2.5 plus bushels an acre loss, or, almost a third of a ton of corn silage. To put it in perspective, good meters, good finger meters, the tried and true, can only singulate at about 98.5% singulation. Vacuum meters, that was supposed to be the answer, but I've also seen some vacuum meters that only singulate 97, 98%. Some of the best meters in the industry, however, can singulate consistently at 99.8% singulation. And that's really what we're looking for if we're setting ourselves up for the best possible yield. So when we look at this and we're scouting and we have, a skip, when we're looking at 17 feet 5 inches and we're missing an ear because we had a skip, it means a lot if that's what it looks like throughout the field. Actually, 1/1000th of an acre and 30-inch rows, if we're missing an ear, that can equate to 7 bushels or just over 1 ton of corn silage. So this is what we're trying to avoid, you know, a bunch of multiples off on the right picture, meters just not performing well, probably a little questionable on, you know, the planting conditions at the time, looking at the cracked soil, but maybe not. On the left, we got a late emerger, so maybe some depth control issues going on, where the operator didn't really have visibility in what the downforce was. They were losing ground contact or planting too deep. So this is what poor singulation and late emergence looks like, what we're trying to avoid. So seed spacing also can be an issue. And in a conventional system where we have a meter that drops seeds down into a tube, we've lost control over the seed the minute it leaves vacuum. In this case, so I'm showing a precision planting meter here. When the seed leaves that vacuum area and goes down the conventional seed tube, we lose control. Gravity takes over. And if we have, you know, a ride back on the row unit is compromised because we're going too fast or field conditions are too rough, then we can have spacing issues and, you know, have seeds too close together or too far apart. And if the farmer doesn't have a sensor on the back or a monitor that's telling them that we're having a spacing issue, it's going to be that scenario where they come back after the fact, after germination, to take a look and say, oh, I could have done better here. There's a lot of value in making sure that our spacing is right and being provided that information real time via monitor and sensors back on the bar. You look at the graphic here. This is from Dr. Nielsen out of Purdue University, did some trials that indicated that for every 1 inch increase in standard deviation, that we could expect 2.5 bushels of loss. And reading through the literature, he didn't just do this research once, he did it twice and replicated it and found these statistics that, you know, 16% of fields were less than the 3 inch, and it got worse from there. So there was really a lot of opportunity in meter and seed delivery improvement on the precision side to really capitalize on this yield loss. You know, seed size and shape is a real challenge for farmers. You know, you place an order in the fall and you hope, you know, you even get that variety in the spring in some cases, not to mention, you know, the variability in size and shape of the seed that you get actually delivered. And that can cause some real meter problems, especially in finger meters that, you know, can't really compensate well for that different, you know, go from a large round to a small round or a medium flat. So these new metering technologies really have helped us overcome that. And the accelerometers on the row unit, what I'm pointing to here, provide that real-time feedback, no different than your phone, switching it from portrait to landscape. Similar accelerometers are in these little boxes on the row. They're telling us what the vibration is and what the ride quality. So if we need to slow down, right, the operator can be cued into, you're going too fast, or you need to rework the field, or you're going to have spacing problems. So seeding control is really important, right? We talked about surgical seed placement. Now, how do we get that done? So we pick the right meter, we get the right settings, the right vacuum, then we need to go to deliver. So all of these systems I'm showing on the screen are commanded by a monitor, the brains of the operation, and they all can deliver different populations, as Scott was talking about variable rate prescription. So they all can do it. The one that's second from the right is a hydraulic motor, and that hydraulic motor is usually driving a hex shaft. So it would be either a planter wide control from the monitor via hydraulics and a speed sensor on the shaft to tell us how fast or what the RPMs are of that hydraulic motor, or the other 3 options, which are becoming more and more popular, are individual row by row electric drives. So I've shown a couple different ones here: Ag Leader, Precision Planting, and John Deere's ExactEmerge Go Fast system. They all approach the task a little differently. The Ag Leader and Precision Planting are 12-volt systems, whereas the John Deere is a 56-volt system. So they all do it a little differently. There's pros and cons, I think, to all the systems, but at the end of the day, you know, I think electric drives row by row are really the creme de la creme of seeding control systems. just taking a look at here on the left side of the diagram, a hydraulic drive map that was recorded during planting, same field. The grower upgraded to electric drives in 2013, and you can see here they both implement prescriptions very, very well. The row by row electric delivery system is superior in terms of how crisp the shutoffs are, and you can see clearly, you know, planter wide shutoff versus or change versus row by row. So there's a lot of value, especially multi-hybrid planting or you know, detailed prescriptions that you're trying to implement. I think electric drives are going to come out on top. So planters that are equipped with electric drives also have an advantage in that when they're coupled with a gyroscope, they allow for turn compensation. So automatic turn compensation, no interaction needed by the operator, because the gyro is measuring the rotation of the planter, and the monitor is picking up those measurements and making an adjustment and commanding meters on a row by row basis to change their RPM to overcome that rotation. So the graphic here on the left, we're looking at, you know, a gyro with the turn compensation enabled, the monitor's controlling, we're hitting our commanded population, everything looks really, really good. Then the first pass on the bottom, no gyro, no control, and we can see that, you know, as we're moving, the left side of the planter is starting to overpopulate. So we see all the way up to 34,000 plants per acre on row 1, and then we go all the way to the last row, row 12, and we're way underpopulating. We're seeing almost a 3,000 seed reduction across the planter bar. So electric meters are providing great value in implementing prescriptions row by row, but also, you know, providing an extra level of value in the turn compensation. So you can't do this with a hydraulically driven hex shaft. It has to be an electric meter. Just a slide illustrating what we're trying to accomplish when we you know, do write a prescription and send it to a cab. We want really crisp delineation between the zones. So in this example, we're showing 32,000 plants, and we're going to do a quick shift to 34,000. And it looks like, you know, the far row on this planter, it looks like row 16 or row 24 is going to be first to make that transition if we were in an electric drive scenario. So wouldn't it be great if you could get real-time visibility into what the soil conditions were as you ran through the field? If you knew what the soil moisture was, the soil temperature, the organic matter, how that furrow was, are we dragging a bunch of residue, all while driving without getting out and even you know, touching the soil? Well, there is equipment to get that done, and one of the tools is Smart Firmer, and that's what I've got illustrated here on the right. So Smart Firmer equipment works double duty on the planter. It simultaneously firms seed after it's dropped into the trench, after it's placed by the meter, and it's continuously collecting and reporting environmental data via the optical lens. So I'm pointing there to that optical lens. Pretty phenomenal technology that's giving us that look into the furrow environment, allowing us to make changes, right? So are we in soil moisture? Is 2 inches enough to be in a dry year into the moisture? We know that seeds need to take up about 30% of their weight in water to germinate. So knowing if we're in that water or not is pretty critical to getting that seed out of the ground as fast as possible. So there are other tools that we can couple to this that will automatically adjust the seeding depth on the fly. I don't have that in my presentation, but they do couple together. You know, absent of that technology, we still can, and you know, go to 2.5 inches. Perhaps in a dry year, 3 inches is the right depth on a particular field. So having that visibility to understand, you know, what's going on while you're moving through the fields, pretty powerful. We are also mapping organic matter with this tool. So for subsequent prescription generation, that's that external data that Scott talked about that we might bring into an ag management platform and start planning what our rates are for fertilizer and seed based on that collected organic matter data. And then temperature, right? I never make a recommendation to go out and plant a field unless the soil temperature is sustained greater than 50 degrees. So maybe you pull into that field and you're dragging along and you're noticing we're pretty consistent, at 46 or 48 degrees. Maybe we shouldn't, be planting this. Maybe we should pump the brakes and wait for a better day. So without this kind of data, we're kind of flying blind or getting off and doing multiple hand checks. So when we put, we can put these on every row. We can put one on the planter and record data. But if we want to, use that data and real-time information to control, then we'd put one of these on for every 4 rows, and we could vary the rate of population on the fly based on preset parameters that we put into the display for organic matter, for example. Or in a multi-hybrid situation, we could be, switching hybrids based on these different environments within the field. So I've got a couple maps here that show what Smart Firmer is accomplishing as we move through the field. So organic matter on the left, this is, post planting. We can look at this. We vary from 2.3% organic matter all the way up to 4.5 in this particular field. Moving to the right, we're looking at how we controlled seeding population based on that data. So we told the display, hey, if the organic matter is between 2 and 3%, put this population between 3 and 3.5, this population, so on and so forth. And it goes out there and implements as we're going through the field. Same is true on the last hybrid map. So using that information for organic matter to steer our hybrid selection. Maybe we have a defensive hybrid that we want to put in the lower organic matter sections of the field, and a more aggressive, one in areas that are going to perform. So that Smart Firmer, really gives us that opportunity both in season during the planting pass and post season in our planning when we're planning for next year. So downforce management, this doesn't get talked about enough. It's not a set it and forget it type of operation. We're really driving towards emergence, across the field. We're seeing that, emergence, not spotty, not late emergers, very consistent. And if we're not maintaining our depth, if we set our depth at 2 inches and we end up with seeds that are 1.5 inches or deeper, we're gonna run into trouble. So downforce management is pretty critical. As a single downforce setting across an entire field, understanding we have microclimates in these fields, we're going to be applying downforce in some areas that's too little, and others, too much. Especially if you consider if you have a 3-bushel hopper and we start the day, the morning with it full, a lot of weight on that row unit, we may be carrying too much weight and need to pull weight off. And conversely, as we go throughout the day, as that box becomes empty, we may need more downforce, to stay in the ground and achieve our depth. The goal is to maintain the desired planting depth while managing the row unit weight. So these tools here on the right allow us to do that. We have the airbag system that, is a planter-wide type control where you have a sensor of some type that is reading the gauge wheel weight. We replace the depth stop pin, and then when those gauge wheels come up to stop, we can feel, hey, we've got ground contact and we're at depth, and then we can feel and report on the additional weight that's being applied on that row unit, and either pull it off or apply more to make sure that we're getting depth. So I guess that would be the good. The best would be a hydraulic row by row system. So I'm showing Precision Planting and Ag Leaders offerings here. This is row by row control. We got a weigh sensor on each row, and row 1 could be applying downforce, while row 16 is in a different soil environment, pulling weight off of the row unit. So, the best scenario for a planter is to be in an automatically adjusting setting where we can be compensating on the fly to changing environments in the field based on gauge wheel feedback on these sensors. So here's a look at what hydraulic downforce versus airbag systems look like, just in terms of response time. We see that the hydraulic downforce is way superior in terms of how it can react to those changing sensor readings. Airbag systems, way better than that manual set and forget, but not nearly as responsive to changing field conditions. So planter efficiency, how do we double our efficiency without running a second planter? How do we get more acres done in a day with one man and one piece of equipment? We know the labor issues that face the industry, so we don't have a bunch of people jumping up and down to run planters 24 hours a day. The answer is go faster. So the equipment I'm showing on the screen now is 2 different mechanisms to increase the speed, or 2 pieces of equipment that allow us to increase the speed of the planter pass up to 10 miles an hour. So these 2 pieces of equipment are actually taking the seed from the meter all the ways down to the seed tube, where we don't lose control to gravity as we do in the conventional seed tube. So spacing, as we increase speed, doesn't become an issue. We maintain spacing even if we're going faster. So these kind of tools allow us to be a little more selective about weather conditions and field conditions. If we know that we can go out there and be more efficient, maybe, not double my acres, but maybe I can do 1/3 more acres in a day if I can vary my speed from 5 to 7. Not all field conditions are going to let us run 10 miles an hour, but the equipment will perform all the way up to 10 miles an hour. Just to give you a sense of, that planters aren't created equal. This is some University of Iowa data showing conventional planter versus a speed tube versus an exact emerge at 5, 7.5, and 10 miles an hour. And you see on the conventional system, as we increase speed, and actually even at 5 miles an hour, the wheels are falling off, especially when we increase speed. So at 1.2 inches of standard deviation for the speed tube and 1 at 10 miles an hour for exact emerge, these systems are built to handle this. Remember, 1 inch standard deviation equals 2.5 bushels. So there's some opportunity there to increase efficiency without sacrificing yield. Okay, so we've placed the seed in the ground. Now it's time to close up the trench. So sidewall management is a pretty important aspect here, and depending on the conditions in which you farm, this can be challenging, especially in no-till situations. So advanced type closing systems that are on the market today are using sensors. So this one off the right is a weigh sensor to tell us, do we have ground contact on our closing system? How much applied closing force is being applied? How much might be needed to adequately close that trench and fully envelope the seed and soil? We got pockets, and there's air pockets, that leads to reduced germination and yield loss, late emergers, so on and so forth. So your closing system is finishing up, the important work of the planter. So the one we're looking at here is a 2-stage system that lifts and fractures the soil, breaking the sidewall before the trench is closed. So I thought we'd just look at a graphic here of what these systems look like, taking off a conventional closing system, putting on a more advanced closing system. Let me get my buddy off here. And you'll notice the module up on the airbag that is being controlled manually or automatically from the cab. And that we have a lifting and fracturing of the soil going on with the first stage wheel. And we're placing that seed right in the trench that we created, and then we're closing it, fully enveloping the seed with soil. So fracturing, again, seed requires 30% of its weight in water to germinate. So we have some moisture benefits if we leave the seed in a situation where there's no evidence of any ground penetrating equipment, just like it magically got placed there. So fertilizer placement. Farmers have a lot of decisions to make when they prepare for the planter pass. Do we broadcast fertilizer? Do we band it? How do we apply nutrition? What nutrition is required? And there's a lot of players in that game to get to a general consensus. But generally speaking, we know banding, nutrition next to the seed or the plant's root zone is better. So new tools on the market to do that, allow us to place either, nitrogen or a phosphorus-based product, depending on your soil test and your recommendation and your nutrient management plan, more effectively. So I recognize that every field is different. On fertile fields, maybe we're just applying N, and we don't necessarily want that on the seed. So we're paying attention to our different application points. So this product off on the left allows us to band straight nitrogen, especially in a heavy manure situation with good fertility. We just need nitrogen for the crop, 3 inches off to the side. We can run it on both sides or one side, depending on the farm's desire or use case. It's tucked up under the row unit. You can see the gauge wheel. It's split, so we just have a knife that's sending nitrogen, 1.5 inches, 2 inches deep, where it can move by soil water down to the root zone. And then if we do have a phosphorus need or some potassium that we run or some special blend of biologicals that are getting popular, then we have a piece of equipment that can run in the furrow behind the firmer, and we have 3 delivery point options: wings, which will put about 1/4 inch away, and then right on top of the seed if we want an in-furrow type nutrition application. So just another quick look at a graphic on being able to deliver under the gauge wheel nitrogen, and then 3 application points here should we decide that we need to put some pop-up or off to the side of the seed, giving us 5 different opportunities to place nutrition. No, I went a little over, so I apologize for that, but I appreciate everyone's time and thank you for watching.
Thanks so much, Mike. That video that you showed was really, I appreciated that. As someone who needs to learn a lot about this equipment, that was super impactful. Anyone who has questions, I can throw them in the chat again. One question that I had, you talked a little bit about some adjustments that you can make with this equipment based on organic matter, soil organic matter, and I was wondering how soil type influences the decisions that you make with this equipment, or is organic matter really the valuable measurement when you are making decisions based on this equipment?
Yeah, so soil type will inevitably play into that soil's organic matter, but we're not. You can use the soil survey as a base layer for commanding the equipment. So if we use the soil survey and we want to go from a Bombay to a Muskellunge, and between those 2 soil type shifts, we could make an adjustment. What the smart firmer is doing is it's saying, hey, I don't care about any other data. I'm recording and monitoring real-time soil information. So as that soil organic matter changes, it may coincide with the break in the 2 different soil types. But what we often see is that soil survey was really good for its time, but there are some shifts that we see when we actually go out and measure it, either with a smart firmer or with a Veris machine or something that's actually measuring the soil as you pull it through the field.
Great, thank you. Are there a lot of different challenges that you're seeing between producers that are utilizing a more conventionally tilled system versus the no-till systems that are becoming more popular?
Yeah, I think the concept of going to no-till and not having to make any adjustments on the planter has been a struggle, where you go from conventional to no-till, and then the farmer says, well, no-till didn't work, the trench is opened, or it failed for this reason. I think it oftentimes can be attributed to not making the proper adjustments when you change the different tillage types. And having any of these systems on a planter, whether it be Precision Planting, Ag Leader, or some other OEM, are going to give the insights to the operator that they need to make those changes before they go back out to scout the field and see that the trench is left wide open, for example.
Great, thanks. There is a question in the chat. Ryan asks, how does the Ag Leader Sure Speed meter compare to the new precision John Deere meters? JD John Deere, correct?
Yeah, yep. So I think
Sorry.
they all do a good job. You know, I've seen them all on planters. I haven't done a direct side by side or looked at longevity, but they all are pretty good at you know, getting that seed down and performing really, really well in the field.
Perfect. There we go. All right. I don't see any other questions in the chat. There's the QR code if anyone needs it for water quality or crop advisor credits. Thank you so much, Mike and Scott, for joining us today, and everybody else that's on the call. There are 2 sessions remaining in this series, and we hope to see you back here on Friday at noon to hear about emerging sprayer technologies and utilizing drone imagery for optimizing forage inventories. Thank you so much, and everyone have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.